Hey guys, how we doing today? We're moving on to the gameplay portion of the discussion I wanted to have surrounding how we can improve Mortal Kombat. Now, the previous video was about Mortal Kombat 2, really. I don't think that they're going to add all those things to Mortal Kombat 1. So it was really about what we can expect for the future, or what we could hope for, rather. This video, however, improving the gameplay, I actually think it's things they can do within Mortal Kombat 1. So I'm going to make a bunch of suggestions. I haven't scripted this video, but I have made a lot of notes because I would have forgotten a lot of things. And I'm probably going to forget something, but I've tried to jot down as much as possible. So I've got bullet points in front of me. Now, just before we start, I have been getting this question quite a bit in my DMs and a couple of you on the comments section asking me to debate Foxy. First things first, for those of you that don't know, me and Foxy are like friends. We're not friends, like we don't see each other all the time, but we're blessed. We're in a group chat together. Spoken to him here and there over the years in the group chat, and whenever I meet him, it's always, I've broken bread with the guy. Like it's not a, even though we might have opposing opinions on Mortal Kombat, it's not a thing where I'm gonna flame Foxy and he's gonna flame me. So I know some of you were saying, oh, you guys should have like a live stream, like heated back and forth. I wouldn't mind like sitting there talking to Foxy because me and him are cool, but it's not going to be one of those things where I'm ripping into somebody. So I just wanted to clear that up before anybody else asked me. Me and Foxy are blessed. We've always been blessed. There's never been no animosity between us. I also just want to let you guys know that this video will be covering the 2D Mortal Kombat games, obviously, because those are the ones that we have. But if you've ever been a subscriber on here for more than 5 minutes, you know that I actually prefer the 3D games. But we're not going to talk about the 3D games because I don't think it's within the realms of possibility for them to come back. I think Mortal Kombat is going to continue to be 2D. So that's how we're going to talk about it. That's the realm that I'm going to talk about it in. If you were asking me personally, I would rather that we had a 3D Mortal Kombat game. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I had a couple of you asking me which style I prefer. It's definitely the 3D ones, and if you must know, my favorite one of all of them to actually play is Deadly Alliance. I think Deadly Alliance has the best system out of them, closely followed by Deception. Wasn't a massive fan of Mortal Kombat Armageddon. So Deadly Alliance and Deception. Deception has the best single player content for me, and Deadly Alliance has the best gameplay for me. So moving on to the gameplay, I want to talk about how we can improve Mortal Kombat 1 as just a product where you're playing it with your friends or playing online, removed from all the other things that I spoke about. So I'll start at the top, I'll work my way down. It's not in any particular order, it's not in order of importance. I'm just going to rattle off some of the notes I've got. Now, one of the things that strikes me about Mortal Kombat 1 is its lack of impact. What do I mean by that? So when you're playing Mortal Kombat 1, for a game that is very invested in being very Hollywood and the story mode was very Hollywood, when you actually get down to the fighting, it's pretty quiet. And it's not very cinematic, it's not very impactful. Now I'm going to use Tekken as a marker on this again, because I think Tekken is a really, really good example of this. When you're playing Tekken, it feels like when someone punches you, it feels like a gun has just gone off. And when you slam someone into the ground, you can see the ground sort of exploding. And you can see things in the background exploding. You can interact with the stage, and it looks very cinematic, even though the gameplay is very in-depth and very complex or complicated. There's a lot going on, and it makes you feel like you're in this like high-budget blockbuster martial arts film, while still retaining the fact that it's a very complex fighting game. You don't really get that with Mortal Kombat. When you hit someone in Mortal Kombat, it doesn't really feel very impactful. It doesn't feel like a big deal. And for a game, again, where I said that they tried to make it look very cinematic, it's a bit puzzling to me that the game doesn't feel like you're beating somebody up. Like, I want to feel like I'm cracking your bones when I'm playing Mortal Kombat. Like, if I get a counter hit on you, and counter hits, they're kind of non-existent in Mortal Kombat, the way they are and the way they function in Tekken and Street Fighter and other fighting games. It doesn't really happen like that in Mortal Kombat, but I think that they should implement something like that, and it should be very cinematic, and it should make you feel like you're breaking someone's ribcage. I mean, Mortal Kombat is known for its gore. I really feel like they need to work on that, and they need to make people feel like you are in a high stakes death match and you are literally beating your opponent to death. Of all the fighting games, Mortal Kombat should emphasize that the most, and it just doesn't. It feels very bland and very bare bones when you're fighting. Now, just piggying back off that, I do want to talk a little bit about the stages as well. The stages look very beautiful, but they're very boring. There's nothing really going on. Now in Injustice, you had stage interactables and you had the ability to smash people through walls, and I actually thought that was really cool. It was very simple, but it looked very cool. Now you can expand on this. Now again, I'm very sorry for doing this. I know it's going to wind some people up, but I'm going to use Tekken as a comparison. Now in Tekken, you can smash people through walls. And what they've done is they've gone a step further. You can smash people through walls for strategic reasons. It's not just to look pretty. So if you didn't know, in Tekken, when you smash people through walls, or you knock them through balconies, some of their white bar disappears. And the white bar is very, very important because you can gain your health back when you do a heat engager or when you're attacking your opponent. So ideally the aggressor wants to find ways to shorten that white bar. The wall is one of those ways. Now the good thing is that you have the option to go for more damage because you won't necessarily get the most damage from knocking someone through the wall, but you will take away the most white health. So you give people options. You allow them to express themselves and choose which road they want to go down. And it could go several ways depending on stage positioning. Now obviously Mortal Kombat is a 2D fighting game, and because it's a 2D fighting game, it's going to be more limited than a game like Tekken, but that doesn't mean that you can't have the stage interact with the characters. And the way I think they can do that is through doing what they did with Injustice, where you can knock people through walls, but again have it in a way where you have options. Maybe you won't get as much damage as you would if you just finish the combo normally, but maybe you'll get better stage positioning. Maybe you'll take away some of their breaker through doing that, or their super bar. Maybe it will have some sort of effect on the character where you substitute damage. It looks very pretty, it looks very impactful. Like imagine Shao Kahn ramming someone through a wall, pause, and he's just, you know, crashing into another part of the stage. It's not like they haven't had this before, it's just it was very simple before. Back in the old Mortal Kombat games, the 2D ones, you can knock people onto other stages. Now granted, like I said, it was very simple, but I do think there's a way to make the stages feel more alive. On top of that, when characters do very heavy hitting moves, like for example, when Shao Kahn does his axe slam into the ground, and he puts his axe on the ground, I think it would be really cool to have something on the stage sort of pop. Oh, Shao Kahn's axe has hit the floor, massive explosion. Like make it look really cool. I mean, this game is meant to appeal to the casuals, and clearly it does. We're going to get to them in a little bit. But you could do things where it's like, oh, this is really grand. This is really nice to look at. For now, there's not really much going on the stage. It's not that different from Mortal Kombat 11, if I'm being 100% honest. So that's more on the stages and the impact, so that general presentation. Something else that I want to touch on, removed from that, this is now moving on to something else, is I feel like you're blocking too much in this game. Now, I'm going to put blocking and I'm going to put chip damage in the same section. So everything in this game does chip unless you do a flawless block. We're going to get to flawless block in a bit as well. And I just don't think it's very good. I think it creates a very frustrating experience. Now, I don't mind if everything does chip damage, but I do think there should be a way for you to regain that. Dying in block is very frustrating. This has nothing to do with skill. This has nothing to do with being able to play the game. It's just something that people find frustrating, to be blocking and dying. It's very annoying. And yes, you can flawless block, of course. And yes, there's ways out of things. You can duck, you can use up block. There's ways to counter people, there's ways to use your armor. But my point is that dying in block is really annoying. And it's really annoying in this game specifically because there are characters like Johnny Cage that can stagger their normals and keep you in the corner blocking. You will lose a ton of chip damage trying to block your way out of Johnny Cage. And then on top of that, the cameos add to it as well. So he's there doing that. Kung Lao throws his hat on the floor. He starts doing it again. Kung Lao throws his hat on the floor. It's just a bit like, okay, there are ways out, but it creates this really frustrating player experience. It's not fun to be in the corner constantly with very limited options when the aggressor has so many options and you're also losing health for blocking. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, this is a Mortal Kombat thing. Well, maybe it's something in Mortal Kombat that needs to change. I mean, Mortal Kombat does sell very well, but one thing I've noticed is that people drop off it a lot. Before I made this video, I spoke to some of my friends who are very casual players, and they all have Mortal Kombat, and none of them are playing it. And it seems to be this game that people buy because the trailers are very over the top and there's loads of blood and gore. They play it for a week and they go back to what they were doing before. There's no staying power. People get annoyed with Mortal Kombat because of the way it's designed, and I do think it's high time that they ditch some of the things that people have come to know Mortal Kombat for, because not all of them are good. So I would change chip damage. The change that I would make to chip damage is I would remove chip damage from all normals, or I would implement a system much like Street Fighter 5 did, much like Tekken has done, much like other fighting games have done, where if you're taking chip damage through blocking, you have the opportunity to regain it through attacking, or maybe through flawless blocking or something. Just something that gives the defender incentive to, well, not even incentive is the wrong word, it just something that gives the blocker less reason to get frustrated, because it is very frustrating no matter who you are. I've seen high level players playing the match and they're just blocking Storm Cell. It's down one Storm Cell, down one Storm Cell. It's like I've just lost like 20% because I didn't get the perfect flawless block, but all this guy's got to do is do down one Storm Cell. Like, it's not really fair, it's not proportionate. So I would change those. Another thing that I would change is I would change the throw system. Now, I did see some of the criticism that you guys gave me regarding throws, and I'm sorry, I don't agree with you. I think that having a system where you are purely guessing is not good. Now, some people were saying to me, Mike, you guess in every fighting game. I think you misunderstand what I mean. Yes, of course, if you're playing Street Fighter or if you're playing Tekken and someone is attacking you and they go for a throw, technically, yeah, you're guessing if they're going to punch or if they're going to throw. But the difference between Tekken, Street Fighter, and Mortal Kombat is that in Street Fighter, it's a one button tech. So if you see it, you've pressed the throw button and it breaks. In Tekken, there are visual indicators. So an arm on the left side will reach out, and that means you either have to press triangle or square, one of them, I can't remember. And the right arm will, I think, triangle. And then both arms is 1+2, which is square and X. Obviously, there's some exceptions to that. There are situations where the throws are guaranteed now or they're harder to break, which is fine. Options, variety, I'm all for that. But in general, generic throws in Tekken or Street Fighter for that matter, removed from command grabs, they're easy to break and it doesn't create this frustrating experience where you feel like you're literally guessing, because in Mortal Kombat, it's not enough that you're going to guess if Johnny Cage is going to do jab or elbow to the ribs, is that he's going to grab you, and within that grab you have to guess. There's no way for you to know which way you're going to go. Now, they did this in Injustice. They actually fixed this issue where in Injustice you can grab somebody and they can do a one button tech and push you away, and what that does is it eliminates the luck factor. And I know that some casual players may not like that because it makes it easier for them to open up opponents. And to be honest with you, these videos are not really for casual players. If you're someone that just plays on your couch and enjoys Mortal Kombat, this video is not for you. You probably shouldn't even be here. This is more for the people that are invested in getting better at Mortal Kombat and being rewarded for skill. Moving on to fireballs now. I did touch on this in the previous video I did, but for those of you that are just watching this one, I'll mention it again. Fireballs passing through each other is one of the most stupid things that exist in Mortal Kombat, and I know a lot of Mortal Kombat diehards have just come to accept that it's part of Mortal Kombat's identity, but sometimes it's okay to stir things up. You know, sometimes things need a change. There is no benefit to Mortal Kombat having fireballs that pass through each other. It is honestly one of the most stupid things I have ever seen. It exists nowhere else. Literally nowhere. Mortal Kombat is the only fighting game that does this, and it does it across the board. It's not a few fireballs here and there, it's everything. So you lose this whole fireball war that you could have, this whole full screen to mid screen battle with somebody's fireball versus yours is completely out the window. It just ceases to exist, because in fireball wars you could be fighting somebody that has a better fireball than you, but you could be a better player and understand how to maneuver around it. You could be better at inputting it quicker than your opponent to overwhelm them. You could be better at using your meter, because the more meter you use on a fireball, the stronger it gets, so you can blast through them. There's a layer of depth to it that Mortal Kombat is completely lacking. It's non-existent. Now, I know this might be more fun for casual players, but again, this video is not for casuals that just like mashing buttons. This is more for people that are interested in becoming good at the game. It also creates for a very frustrating player experience, because when you've got one character that has an overwhelmingly better fireball than others, it is very irritating to have a fireball war with them, because you're just like, well, they've won the initial clash, their fireball hit me first, their fireball does a bit more damage, so I kind of have to jump in now, or I have to continuously flawless block towards them, and if I miss it a little bit, everything does chip, and they're shooting fireballs across the board. It's just a bit like, you could alleviate so much anger from people and the player experience if you just did the bare basics of a fighting game, the bare minimum of what is required of a fighting game to make something competitive and fun to play. This is a really, really weird thing that I've seen happen in Mortal Kombat since basically its inception. This is dating back even to the 3D games. I will never really understand it. I don't think they're ever going to change it. I think that's honestly because they don't really understand how to make a proper, intricate fighting game. And I honestly believe that I think NetherRealm are good at making something look pretty, but I don't necessarily think they're very good at making it work well. So moving away from fireballs, because again, that's a whole layer of the game that we could go into, but the point is that they need to clash and they need to have a priority system. So moving on from that, I want to talk about the characters and the just the overwhelming simplicity. Like, I don't know how else to put it. The characters are designed in such a simplistic manner that everybody plays the same. Everybody plays the same. Like, everybody's doing the same shit. Mr. Aquaman, or whatever his name is, the guy on Twitter that made that tweet, I'll bring it up. But here he's talking about player expression and everybody copying each other. And it's a bit like, well, what do you expect people to do? There's not really much to do in this game. Everybody's doing the same shit because that's all people are able to do. Player expression is non-existent. And we all thought by adding cameos in, it would allow people to express their style a little bit more. But it doesn't. It locks the character into a specific way of playing. And on top of that, the cameos are very lopsided in the sense that they kind of have a couple of functions if you're lucky. Someone like Kung Lao, for example, it's really string, low hat, string, low hat, string, low hat. Nobody uses his teleport. It's very rare. It might be occasionally they might use it. Occasionally you might see a Shao Kahn player use it, but even then when they're using Shao Kahn and you've got the overhead, it's mostly low hat you're going for. You rarely ever see the spin. And then with other cameos, it's the same sort of thing. Every time I see Sector, he is just used for his bomb setup. I never see anybody using the uppercut. It's very, very rare when you see people using the uppercut. Same goes to Striker. Striker does the exact same thing every single time. I should know. I was using Striker and I've watched other people using him. They save his bar to throw his grenades because the grenades will cover the block string if it becomes unsafe, and it allows the aggressor to go back in to continue pressure. And it's not worth using the overhead or the low, or even the thing where he puts the handcuffs on you in most cases, because you could have used that to cover your string. There are going to be situations when you're closing out the round where you might throw them out here and there, but I mean, there's not really much reason to do it when you've got bombs that can cover you and allow you to go for more powerful mix-ups with your character. It's just, they didn't design them very well. There's no depth to it, and I understand why this game's so simplistic. I understand why they've made it so basic. It is very appealing to the casual player because everybody can do the combos in this game. Everybody can do the setups in this game. There is no work to it. The minute you see somebody do something on YouTube, you can replicate that almost instantly. You would literally have to be a vegetable to not be able to do it. There's just no player expression whatsoever. The characters are way too simple. So what I think they should do is I think they should nerf some attacks that are too powerful, like Storm Cell, which covers too many options and again creates a very frustrating player experience because you're doing down 1 Storm Cell, down 4 Storm Cell. Or they should nerf things where they're covering people. So I'm going to get onto consequences in a little bit, but that's one of the things they need to do. And they need to buff other things and give them other utilities. When I've got one button that basically does everything for me, why would I use anything else? And then it makes it very simple and very easy to play. So what they need to do is, like I said, nerf certain moves and buff certain moves, but also expand the movesets. There are nowhere near enough moves in this game. If you go onto the move list and you look at it, you think, wait, what's Hollow talking about? I'm scrolling down, there's a bunch of stuff here. Stop and look at it properly. The first one might be press square, and then press square and triangle, then press square, triangle and circle. It's the same moves, it's just the strings are extended a little bit, except it's not like Tekken where you have hundreds of moves and there's hundreds of ways to apply them and they have hundreds of situational applications. In Mortal Kombat that doesn't exist. There's a couple of them, there's no real situational applications to them, they all kind of function the same, and it's just a bit like I'm doing the same shit over and over again. It becomes very, very boring. There's no way for me to truly express myself the way I want to. And I think, again, not only does that create a frustrating player experience, it becomes boring and people turn it off because it doesn't feel like you're learning something new on Mortal Kombat. And it also doesn't feel like you need to practice anything. All of the hardest Shao Kahn combos can be easily accessed. Easily. I went onto Video Games Joe's page because he's the best Shao Kahn that I've seen. I saw the combos he was doing, I copied all of them. Might be one or two here and there because of the way hitboxes function in MK1, they're very inconsistent, that drop, but it's not particularly difficult. And I'm like, okay, cool, well I could add another cameo and change things up here and there, but the change is not drastic enough for me to really want to explore other cameos either. It's very, very bare bones. Even in the gameplay it's bare bones, so they need to increase the moveset. Give more moves, more different utilities. Nerf some attacks that are too overwhelming, that basically play the game for you, and buff some attacks that are basically not really used for much. Give them different utilities. And I was going to talk about this later, but I might as well talk about it now since we're talking about moves. They need to make more things unsafe in this game. There's way too much spamming going on. And I hate throwing that word around, it sounds very scrubbish. Again, I'm going to use Raiden as a prime example, because I think he's a very good example. I could use Johnny Cage, or I could even use Liu Kang. There's this whole stagger situation in Mortal Kombat. It's been there for God knows how long, and it just frustrates people. It frustrates them because they're like, right, stagger, 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 special that is safe, stagger, stagger. And it's just like, what are we doing here, really? The lack of consequence in this game is shocking. The amount of BS people can get away with is actually quite shocking. So I think they need to make some moves more unsafe and increase the risk on them so that it makes the aggressor think twice about what they're doing rather than just mashing buttons. Now, does this mean that a high-level player like Foxy can't pick a strategy like that apart? No, I'm not saying that. Obviously, people like Foxy and whoever else, I don't know. They're good enough in this game to be able to figure out, I could do this and I can do that, but that doesn't take away frustration. And this is a sentiment that I've heard from people back in Mortal Kombat 11 that were very high level in the game. Yeah, they knew how to deal with things, they knew how to deal with the Joker, but do I want to deal with it? I'll give you an example. I'll use Tekken again. There are characters in Tekken that are frustrating to deal with. I'll give you a few of them. Kunimitsu, Marduk, and Akuma. All of those characters are very frustrating to deal with. I should know, I main Marduk, but there are multiple ways to deal with them, multiple ways. And those ways that they give you to deal with these characters are very satisfying and very rewarding. And there are multiple ways to explore dealing with them. So there's a couple of popular routes that you can use to beat Marduk, to beat Akuma, to beat Kunimitsu. But there is so much going on in Tekken that there's so much that you can explore and express yourself. We just saw a player called Jack Crush or Joe Crush at the Tekken World Tour, and he was using, I think it's 1-1 or 2-2 with Jack, which is a string that most people don't use. And it seems really simplistic, but it's because there's a very popular way to do a 10 frame punish with Jack, for example. And he was using a different way and showing different options and what could happen if you do it this way. And in the 7 years, however long Tekken's been about, I haven't really been seeing a lot of high level people doing that. So I think that they need to give people more ways to explore these things. I think people will be more happy to invest and turn it on and be like, there's something new to learn today. It doesn't count when they release Chameleon on day one, because obviously you're learning something new, but things will fall back into place after a week. They made out like Tremor was going to be this big revolutionary cameo, and it just turned out to be the same shit different day. Yeah, he can do loads of things, but it doesn't really change the game plan. There's not much going on. Mortal Kombat 1 is like a peeled onion, right to its core. There's no layers. There's nothing. That's that. There's one thing that I did want to touch on, and I'm going to pull up a clip here from Main Man, and he said something very interesting to me, and it's not something I think will ever happen in Mortal Kombat, so just give it a listen.
Why did you say Kazuya is trash? I never said Kazuya is trash. I said that I didn't like Kazuya in Tekken 8. What they've done to him in terms of changing him. But I spoke too soon, unfortunately. I should have shut the fuck up. But the more I labbed him, the more I understood what they're doing to the character. And they've changed him substantially. A lot of the things I said in that video, they still stand. There are things I dislike. But there's so much to like about him that it heavily outweighs the negatives. And I really like the character now. So I made a mistake there. I spoke too soon.
So the Main Man said that he was wrong about Kazuya. Now, for context, because obviously I don't want to play too much of his video, Main Man was convinced that when Kazuya came out on Tekken 8 and he got his hands on him, that they had nerfed him, he became very boring to play, and he was no longer interested in the character. Now, I never agreed with him when he said this, because I also have the demo, and I had the closed network test, and I had the closed beta, and I've been to events where Tekken 8 is, and I've played with Kazuya. I had a different take on Kazuya. Now, that's not me saying that I'm anywhere near as knowledgeable as Main Man with Kazuya, because I'm not. Okay, he's an amazing Kazuya player. I watch every time he uploads, so I'm not saying any of that. But what I am saying is that he got it wrong, and the reason that he changed his mind is because there is so much to explore on Tekken that, given a take like that, very, very early on in Tekken is not a good idea, because the game is very complex and there's a lot going on. So there's a lot to discover with the characters, which I thought was really cool, because he uploaded this video and he said, I was wrong, this is where I was wrong, and this is where I was wrong, and I got this wrong, and they've buffed this and they've nerfed that, and he's actually really, really fun and really, really strong. And I was like, cool, that's actually cool. Not cool that he's admitting it, although it's good that he's able to admit that. I think that's a commendable trait. But it's really cool that the game is so big and so expressive that players can go in and be like, hold on a second. Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know you could do this. I didn't know you applied this here. I didn't know he had these setups and these situations, or this combo route existed, or you're meant to use this move like this. I was using it like this because of my knowledge in Tekken 7. I think that's really, really cool that you're able to do that. You cannot do that in Mortal Kombat 1. What you see is what you get, and it's very much like Mortal Kombat 11. If you go back, because I've had this channel up now for about 5 years, I think, I don't know, and although I've been inconsistent in posting, and this is probably the most consistent I've been in like 3 or 4 years, I said it on day one, somewhere in my videos, that the way Mortal Kombat 11 was on day one is how it was going to end. And you know what? It took people 2 years to finally turn around and say, yeah, it was basically the same shit. Same shit, different day. It wasn't like MKX where there was more combo routes or more ways to express yourself. There was nothing. It was very bare bones, and it's even worse in Mortal Kombat 1. There's no way. I am almost certain that unless there is some sort of grand patch that comes out, that what I'm saying about Mortal Kombat 1 today will be true 2 years from now. The game is dying in front of us, to quote somebody on Twitter. I don't remember who said that. The game is literally perishing in front of us. People are leaving in droves, and casual players are leaving in droves as well. They've bought the game, yes, but they ain't sticking around. People turn this game on for 1 week because there's nothing to do, and the online don't even work. So I just want to point out with Main Man that I think it's really cool that you can have a take on a game like Tekken, and even Street Fighter to a lesser extent, but the games have so much going on inside them that you can be wrong. Oh, and I also want to say that, just before I move on from that the new heat system in Tekken, I think Mortal Kombat can take a thing or two from it, not necessarily take the heat mechanic itself, but I think people, again, when they saw the heat mechanic, they just thought, oh, you do your heat move, you do your heat animation, and then that's it, the round's over. The heat system is very complex, very, very complex. And the reason it's complex is because it has multiple applications, and we didn't really realize how many things you could do with it or how many situations can occur with it until we sat down and played the game for hours, for days, for weeks. Now it's gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, this heat system is quite a respectable system.
You really gotta think about this stuff. And again, it's like, goes back to those of you who say, oh, Tekken 8, you know, it's got less stuff going on than Tekken 7. It's so brain dead, they've dumbed it down for beginners, and it's like, this game is a heck of a lot more complicated than Tekken 7. And rounds can play out in so many ways.
The reason I'm bringing it up is because there's a whole button in Mortal Kombat that's basically useless, and it's called stance switch. L2 on PlayStation, LT on Xbox, whatever the button is. You know when the character flips around constantly? Useless. Useless. I know there's some videos online that are like, oh, it has certain applications here. I remember I used to see Mortal Kombat 9 videos where they were saying if you switch stance this way the combo doesn't work, but if you switch stance that way it does. It's a lazy mechanic. It is basically useless. Nobody in tournament uses that crap, and I don't even think people remember to use it when they're at home. There's a whole button that is useless. It's literally on the configuration. It says stance switch. No one uses it. If that doesn't scream lazy, I don't know what does. So what they could do, and I don't have a suggestion for a mechanic, but all these new fighting games have some sort of mechanic going on, is implement something into Mortal Kombat. There's a whole button there. There's a whole button there that you've just left unchecked. So stance switching needs to go. And create a system that has multiple layers like the heat system. Maybe on day one we will see this new system that NetherRealm creates and we're like, what the hell is this? Like we did with heat. If you go back to my first Tekken 8 review, I did not like heat, but I did not understand it correctly. And granted, it went through several changes and it's much better now, but there was much to explore. I would love to be wrong about Mortal Kombat and be like, yo, we didn't explore this properly. Actually, this is a lot better than what we thought. It just doesn't exist right now. So there's a whole useless button. I touched on Flawless Block a little bit earlier. I think Flawless Block is just a dog shit mechanic. I don't mind there being a parry in the game, but of all the parries I've seen in any fighting game, this is just the most lame. I think when it functions, like as when someone activates it, what it does is okay. But I've already said that I don't think chip damage should work the same way it does in Mortal Kombat games because it creates a frustrating player experience. So I think parries could change. I think maybe counters. I don't know. I don't really have a good replacement for Flawless Block. Couldn't get my words out there. But I just know that I don't like it. And I know that I prefer the Street Fighter 6 parry. I know people don't really like that one either. I prefer it. I don't necessarily think it's great, but I think it's much better than Flawless Block. And I like the abundance of options in Tekken where you can low parry, you can counter standing. Certain characters have parries built in. There's no real options in Mortal Kombat. So I don't know. Flawless Block is just a very lame mechanic again. It's something that I could probably do without, but then you'd have to change other things as well. Obviously, they need to fix the hitboxes. The Tanya situation is really telling of that, because I'm going to touch on casual players now a little bit based on that situation. There were some really funny comments that we got, and we're going to be doing a video on them. The people that have posted really funny comments in my comment section, just reading them out and going over them and explaining my part, because some people have asked me questions and it's very clear to me they don't understand how fighting games are supposed to work. So I think they need to fix the hitbox situation in Mortal Kombat. It's all over the place. Someone posted a video today on Twitter where something was supposed to function as an overhead and they blocked low and it didn't work. The game is just sort of broken across the board.
Round 2, fight.
I think they need to make sure that the hitboxes are on point. As a matter of fact, that would be one of the first things that I fix. The hitboxes are just a mess. There's not really much more to say there. And then lastly, what I do want to say is that I think we've gone over quite a bit here. The last thing I want to say is related to the roster. Now, I didn't want to touch on this, but I think I should. The roster of Mortal Kombat characters that they chose for Mortal Kombat 1 is actually pretty good. I was actually pretty impressed with the selection. This is one of my favorite Mortal Kombat rosters, obviously outside of Armageddon because it had so many people in it. But of all the rosters I've seen of the modern age Mortal Kombat, I'd say this is the best one. What I don't like about it is the abundance of guest characters. Mortal Kombat is not short on cool characters. Mortal Kombat is not short on cool character designs and people want come back to the game. There's multiple characters that I want to see back in the game. Where the hell's Noob Saibot? Where's Jax? There's so many characters that are missing, and it's okay. Like, I saw the roster and I was like, do you know what? This is a cool roster, but these guest characters, you need to slow down with them. It doesn't feel special anymore. It's throwaway now. We got Peacemaker, Omni-Man, and Homelander. Clearly, all of them were supposed to be for Injustice 3, but because it got scrapped and turned into Mortal Kombat 1, they had to put them somewhere. It's so out of place. They are so out of place. I'm sorry. It just doesn't fit with the Mortal Kombat universe. I know that they're from shows that are very violent, but it's very, very evident that they were meant to be going up against Superman and the Green Lantern and not Scorpion and Shao Kahn. It's just completely out of place. There are so many cool Mortal Kombat characters, and on top of that, if you're going to do guest characters from other fighting games. How cool would that be? What if we had Nightmare from Soul Calibur in Mortal Kombat in a 2D game? How cool would that be to see? I can't even imagine it. I think they need to stop with all the guest characters. It's like, come on guys, man, what are we doing here? Now, to round off the video, I do want to say that there are some mechanics that I do like in Mortal Kombat. I do like the up block. I think up block is a good defensive mechanic. I think the risk reward factor is actually pretty good. I like breakers. I like the fact that breakers came back. Breakaway was an absolutely appalling system from Mortal Kombat 11, and anyone that defends it deserves to no longer have access to gaming consoles. Mortal Kombat 11's breakaway system is absolutely ridiculously stupid. So I appreciate breakers. I had an issue with the first touch giving you an extra meter. I do find that a little bit weird, but I didn't find it that big of a deal to bring up in this video in the actual list, so I'm kind of 50-50 on that one. I don't mind characters having different health. I don't think that's a problem. Maybe the way they've implemented it could be a little bit better, but the idea and the sentiment, I don't actually mind that. I don't particularly like the super situation in the game where you get down to a certain health and then you get your super. That's not the problem for me. I think that part is fine. My problem is that if you miss it, it comes back in about 10 seconds, right? Now, they've made it much easier to punish them in this game, which is fine, but I don't think that you should just be allowed to do it. Now, I do think the reason that exists is because, again, Warner Bros. And NetherRealm are more concerned with catering to casual players, and casual players like having big flashy supers with little consequences. So I think that's why they did it. I think that's why they'll continue to do it. And I hope they don't. I think it's really lame. I think it should be like Tekken, where you use your rage art in the round and you lose it if you miss it. Now, I will say in Tekken, I don't like the fact that you can do it every round. I've never been a fan of that. So that's one thing that could change. They could maybe steal from each other. But just speaking on Mortal Kombat's behalf, I do not like the fact that you can do that and it comes back very quickly. It's very, very annoying. And again, it creates one of those frustrating player experiences. So those are really gameplay changes that I think they could implement into Mortal Kombat 1 on some level. I mean, not all of them, because some of them would require massive system changes. But I do think it would be nice for them to do some of them at least. At the very least, fix the hitbox situation. Because as Sikander demonstrated in his video, the hitbox situation is a mess. I honestly can't believe how people don't understand that, but it was brought to my attention that the way casual players play Mortal Kombat and the way people like me and some of my colleagues play Mortal Kombat is completely different, and the way we see fighting games is completely different. So I'm not surprised anymore that they reacted that way. I was in the moment, but I've been enlightened now. And I just want to say that when I say casual player, that's not really an insult. It just means that you're not somebody that really dives into the complexities of the game, which is fine. You know, if you're just in your bedroom mashing buttons, it's okay. You know, have a good time. I don't know why you're over here commenting on my YouTube video if you're enjoying the game. I'm not telling you not to enjoy it. More power to you. Go nuts. But for those of us that are not happy with the product, that's why I'm here doing these videos. Now, I've really said everything that I need to say about Mortal Kombat for now. I will be uploading videos still on this channel. It will be commentary much like this. I have a couple of people that I want to address the way I did Diff. Not to attack them, just to address some silly points that I think they've made. And Tekken 8 is right around the corner, so I'm going to work out what I want to put on this channel. I hope you guys stick around to listen. It will be much of the same, just with different topics. And I will be back tomorrow with another video. So take care, guys. Have a good night, have a good morning or afternoon, wherever you are, and I will see you around.